Been here with you, and I want to share today another story of the boldness of St. Francis. This is apparently turning into a St. Francis series, but as a church, we've been working our way through Acts this summer, and one of the major themes that we've been talking about throughout the series is all the ways that the disciples boldly followed where the Holy Spirit was leading them to go, boldly praying the prayers that God was going to perform miracles in their midst. And for me, St. Francis modeled the same sort of boldness, the boldness of following God. I want to invite you to go back and watch last week's story about Francis taking off all his clothes in the town square, provide a little bit of context of St. Francis's life. And today I want to tell you the story of St. Francis and the wolf. Maybe it's a little more bold than Francis taking off his clothes. So there's a village in Italy, it's like 100 kilometers south of Florence, called Gubbio. And in this village, there was a wolf that was terrorizing the entire village. So the wolf would come at night and kill livestock and kill sheep, kill whatever animals were around. And eventually the wolf killed all the livestock, and it started to kill the townspeople. And as you can imagine, the townspeople were panicked and terrified. And as they were in the midst of this fear and panic, they heard that St. Francis was nearby. They'd heard legend of him and his relationship with all of creation, and they thought he might be able to help them. So they sent somebody to fetch Francis. He comes to the village of Gubbio, and they tell him the story of how the wolf is terrorizing the village and how they're living in fear and they can't live like this anymore. So Francis says, well, somebody take me to the wolf. And finally, somebody had enough courage to show Francis where the wolf was living on the outskirts of town in a cave. And as the story goes, as Francis approached the wolf lunged at Francis, ready to attack as this vicious predator, right? And Francis holds out his hands and says, Brother Wolf, why are you terrorizing the people of this village? Apparently the wolf saw that Francis wasn't a threat, so he didn't attack Francis. And Francis then was able to negotiate a peace treaty with this wolf, believe it or not. And the peace treaty that he was able to negotiate was that the wolf could continue to live if he promised to stop terrorizing the village. And he could actually live in the village of Gubbio if the townspeople would offer to feed the wolf. They could live peacefully together. They could actually coexist. And again, as legend has it for this story, the wolf then held out his paw as a sign of this peace treaty to Francis that Francis was able to negotiate. So the townspeople agreed to the terms of this treaty. The wolf agreed to the terms of this treaty, and they ended up living happily ever after. So one of the morals of the story is that we don't need to live in fear and let fear overtake us and overcome us. And that's so true in the times that we're living in today. I realize that the news is terrifying. We're living in the midst of a pandemic, and it's awful, it's terrifying. And we're seeing our streets are burning. People are crying out for justice, and rightfully so. So there's just this spirit of fear that we can't give into, that spirit of fear, because we're trusting in God to allow us to have a bold enough faith to cling to the faith, to cling to God, and allowing Christ to work in us so that we, like the villagers and like the wolf of Gubbio, might live a bold life that would lead to a life of peace. So be well, friends.